And welcome to You Decide Southern California 2014. I'm Tony McEwing. This is the show where you get to meet the politicians pushing for your support. Now, we're going to ask the candidates the questions about the issues that matter to you, and then you can decide if the person deserves your vote. Now, to help question those, on the hot seat with me is Brian Calle. He's opinion editor with the Orange County Register. Our guests are Long Beach Police Chief Jim McDonnell, who is running for LA County Sheriff, and Anaheim candidate for Mayor Lucille Creen. But on the hot seat first is State Controller hopeful Fresno Mayor Ashley Swearengin. She is running against Board of Equalization member Betty Yee. Welcome to You Decide, and welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you so much. It's not quite hot enough yet, so I suppose you'll bring the heat.
We're going to fix it.
There you go.
In fact, why don't you get it started, Brian?
Absolutely, absolutely. Ashley, thank you very much for coming. One of the little-known races in California is the controller seat, but it's the fiscal watchdog of the entire state. Why don't you start by explaining a little bit about what the role is, what the job is?
Well, it is a terribly important role, as you just said. In fact, many have said that it is the most influential position on fiscal health of the state, as well as job creation and economic climate, more so than any other state position besides, of course, the governor. So the controller is in charge of making sure, literally, that every check that gets cut from the state goes exactly to the right place and is spent in the way it is intended to be spent. Has all of the auditing powers, can audit every aspect of state government, but most importantly, as I see it, this role really needs to play heavily in job creation and improving the business climate in California. I don't think the state controller has weighed in heavily enough on those issues, and that's something I plan to change.
What qualifies you for this particular office in your background or in your role as mayor of Fresno? What qualifies you?
Well, I took over as mayor of Fresno in 2009, right at the height of the recession. Every expert in the state and the nation predicted that our city would go bankrupt. All of the indicators seemed to suggest that we were on a path to fiscal disaster. But in fact, we've turned things around. We've had remarkable success in dealing with the fiscal issues in Fresno and also improving the job climate in our city. And you know what? If I can do it for a billion-dollar agency, I today lead a 3,200-person agency and serve as the CEO of that city. I'm quite confident I can do the same for the state of California.
Let's talk about California's business climate, because a lot of people believe that California businesses are overregulated and that they're overtaxed. First of all, do you agree that that is the case here in California? And secondly, realistically, what can the controller do in that regard?
There is no question in my mind that we make it about as hard as possible to do business here in the state of California. I was speaking recently with a telecommunications manufacturer in my city who said, California is doing everything possible to get me to move to Texas. I said, whoa, don't you mean that Texas is doing everything they can to try to get you to move to Texas? He said, no, my very own state is making it almost impossible for me to function here. And this is a growing business that's adding high-value jobs to our economy in the state.
But you don't pass laws.
However, the state controller sits on the Board of Equalization and casts a vote literally every month to determine the way tax policy is interpreted in this state. And that vote is going to get cast either in favor of the taxpayer and in favor of the small business owner, or opposed to the taxpayer. And I intend to bring a strong focus on supporting our taxpayers and our employers and those who provide jobs for the folks in our state.
One of your more controversial positions is that you're a supporter of the high-speed rail, the bullet train, which is not necessarily popular amongst the vast majority of voters in California. Do you think that's a hindrance, or it's going to be helpful on the campaign trail?
Well, it comes up, and I'll say I support high-speed rail as proposed and approved by the voters. And if it can be done in a manner that it operates without a subsidy, and the 2014 business plan indicates that that is, in fact, possible. And so I believe in high-speed rail. I believe that it is far less expensive to implement that mode of transportation than expanding highway lane miles and airports. If we did just that in California over the next 30 years, it would cost 2.5 times more than high-speed rail. But it has to be done right, and it has to be done in a manner that doesn't require an operating subsidy.
No pun intended, but hasn't the project sort of gotten off track?
Well, there's no doubt this project has more than a 20-year history in our state, but frankly, the team that's in place today, it's a new and a different team, both at the executive level as well as the board, and we've seen dramatic improvements. I've been following this, as you can imagine, as the mayor of Fresno for the last 6 years, and we've seen dramatic improvements in the way the project is now being executed. I believe it can be implemented in the way the voters intended. Of course, that's being decided now with the courts. We'll ultimately find out if the courts determine that it can be implemented as the voters have approved, and if it does, then the project will go forward.
And you think that helps you or hurts you on the campaign trail, like I asked?
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, we'll ultimately find out from the voters, but certainly people on the right have said, you know, they don't want to see this project go forward. I've said, you know what, I think it's important for the economy of California to move goods and people and data very quickly. This is one aspect of that, and I think there's a case that can be made.
All right, this is the point in the segment where you get 30 seconds to make any statement you want to make about your candidacy, anything that Brian and I might not have questioned you about.
The state controller is perhaps the most important position in state government, second only to the governor's office in terms of dealing with fiscal health of our state and also improving the economic climate of California. When I took over as mayor 6 years ago, everyone predicted that we would be bankrupt within a matter of years. And in fact, we've overcome a structural deficit. We had to cut our budget. We had to do everything possible to make sure we could live within our means. We've done that, and today Fresno is the #5 job-creating city in the state. Our economy grew 3% over this last year, and actually now state experts are saying that the southern San Joaquin Valley is leading the state and the nation in job creation, and that's because of the reforms I've put in as mayor. I know what it takes to be an independent outside voice. My opponent is coming right out of Sacramento. She has been a long-time state government employee, and I question her ability to really bring the type of independent oversight that's needed in this job.
All right, Mayor Swearengin, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Up next on the hot seat, Jim McDonald. He's running for LA County Sheriff. You decide Southern California 2014. We'll be back right after this.